Thank you for the introduction. And even though that tonight's topics is not as much relevant to the sleep research, but I get a lot of my revelation in my dreams. So you could in a way connect them to that topic. I always like to reiterate that one of the areas that I like to mention in my lectures, which is about human brain. Our brain has close to 100 billion cells that is process informations, and our brain processes 400 billion bits of information per second. That's a lot of information, and it processes them, but we are only aware of 2,000 of it as an average person. And some people may be aware of 2,500 or 4,000, but there's so much that we are not aware, even though our consciousness may process them. So therefore, it takes 20 million of me to be able to make sense of anything in reality for any given second. So by all means, every individual is very unique in their own experiences in life. And how we perceive life, when you study something, when we read something, when we have an experience with an event, there's no two human beings will have the same conclusion from that experience. With that in mind, I'd like to share with you one of my discoveries about this topic. And it is something that I don't usually have a tendency to go out there trying to read books to learn about the topics. I wait till universe dump everything on me. Then I'm going trying to understand why things are happening the way they're happening to me. So tonight I'm only to share with you as a spiritual scientist, as every one of you is a spiritual scientist. My discovery that I have had based on my own misery and my own experiences of life, of how I came to understand about this topic, which I have found that it has actually transformed my life. And so I'm going to share with you my discovery. So what I'm presenting to you is what I think I learned. It may not be what I learned. And some of you who are aware of my method of talking, what I say today could change tomorrow, because I will be a new person. So with that in mind, I'd like to again reiterate that the information here is only my understanding, that it has helped me to have a better clarity about why I exist and what is my goal as an individual in my life. So every one of you, I'm sure, will have your own experience and your own interpretation of this information. I like to start this by the original story that we all know, the first chapter in the Genesis, that God divided the void or the oneness into heavens and earth, dark and light, the land and the seas, male and female. So we all know the story of Genesis was about the plan of creations, plan of God. So we knew there was nothingness, there was void, and there's a lot of interpretations in relationship to understanding what this means. But for purpose tonight, we have an understanding that there has been from nothingness, there's been a creation of a polar opposites. Something that this dichotomy that existed is given rise to our world we know today, whether it's a plant, minerals, ecosystems, whatever it is. And it's interesting that in the Western philosophy, in the Western theology, they refer to Genesis as a way of understanding the creation of the world based on these opposite forces, in which in Eastern philosophy that is referred to as a yin and yang. It's based like a different story, but it's a similar connotations. And so, for example, what we understand about the forces of creation, so how the world has been created, these forces can be explained and they complement each other. Like north is yin while south is yang. For the purpose of tonight, yin is more of a feminine expression of the creative energy, and yang is a masculine expression of the energy. Like cold is yin and hot is yang. And this has got nothing to do with being a man and a woman. This is a creative expressions of a same energy that has been created to complement each other. Still, depressed and round is yin. Motion, aggressive and angular is yang. Winter is yin while summer is yang. Small plants are yin, are feminine, while large trees are yang or masculine. Those with larger rounded leaves are yin, while those with a shape narrow leaves are yang. Yin water is still, while yang water is active and flowing. Yin is soft and passive, while yang is hard and active. And that continues on even in the food we eat. About the type of food we eat, which you will see I mentioned very briefly. And you can see this complement of these two forces given rise to a beautiful world we have today. From the animal kingdom to the food plants to the natures to the farming, the ecosystem, they're all, when you look at it, is a perfect balance of these two forces. And they've taken billions and billions and billions of years for them to complete themselves to a perfect harmony where we are using it and enjoy living in this planet in the way it's presented for us. And nature knows when some of these yin and yang forces or feminine and masculine expression of these forces are in balance, what to do in order to bring it into balance. We could have floods, volcanic eruptions, we could have tornadoes, earthquakes. This is how the nature tends to bring about the balance of these two creative forces. Now, for example, these same expressions of the forces in our body express itself into our organs. For example, the hollow organs, we have like lungs, heart, spleen, liver, and kidneys. They are more feminine or yin organs, and large intestines, small intestine, stomach, gallbladder, and bladder more of a masculine and yang expressions of energy. So a lot of times in Chinese medicine, depending on the individual's ailments and the symptoms you have, is diagnosed or looked at the persons as whether you are yin deficient or yang deficient or yang excess. And a lot of times is usually from a certain excess of this energy that certain imbalances arise. For example, to excess masculine energy or the yang energy, again, masculine energy doesn't mean men, and feminine energy doesn't mean women. Masculine energy means an expression of energy that complements feminine, as will discover it as we go along. So, for example, excessive yang diseases you could give rise to heart disease, cancer, stroke, hardening of arteries, as we mentioned earlier, because it's being hard and contractive. Diabetes, Alzheimer's, nephrite, kidney disorders, and septicemia, blood poisoning. And mental emotional behaviors that arises from the excessive yang or masculine energy is anxiety, confusion, overloaded, hyperactive, nervous, difficulty focusing attention, overwork, overdrive, lack of proper nutrition. For example, so when we want to treat someone with an excess yang energy, we look at to see what kind of behavior activity they could do in which will bring out the yin energy in them. Maybe someone who gets anxiety and excess yang, we have them to go sit still in the jungle. Be very still by the quiet and meditate by itself and have nice beautiful walks in the forest. And so there's certain activities that will brings up the feminine and yin energy. But however, in our world today, if you're working all the time, you don't take a break, you become excess expressions of the energy because you're focusing the energy that was first, as we said in the Genesis, the energy of creative energy that was created by the Creator, by God, was divided to two forces, and it needs to be balanced. When we focus on using one energy all the time, it creates an imbalance. If it creates an imbalance in the scale, and so the nature has to try to correct itself. And so the disease usually is a way that the nature have a tendency trying to correct the expressions of these two forces. Even in a relationship, when we break up in a relationship, it's not that God is such I'm an awful person. That itself could be a tornado, could be an earthquake in a relationship that has happened as a result of an imbalance between the expressions of the feminine and the masculine energy. So maybe a divorce is a way of bringing it into balance. So anything in nature is designed to bring these two forces into balance, because this is the only way that the universe can to move forward, which we can see the example of it in the nature when they are balanced. This is, for example, just a little chart just to see, for example, the food we eat. If you eat too much food, which have too much yang energy, then it will causes a lot of imbalances in your system. It may cause a lot of imbalances in your digestive system. It may cause a lot of gallbladder, gallstones, kidney stones, a lot of things that if you might cause by the excessing yang food, and many other disorders that we might, as you noticed earlier, that could arise from putting too much energy in the yin foods. Again, yang means aggressive masculine energy, yin is receptive feminine energy. And the way our society is today, as you look at the chart, you notice that majority of the diseases that we know today is caused by excess yin. Why? Is because when you look at it, the quality of the yin energy, and when you look at the way that some of these are divided, it classed most of the chemicals, exposure to chemicals that we have in our society today, and drugs and alcohol and sugar and coffee, which is something that we're exposed to in our society, especially in the Western society, will give rise to excess yin energy. And excess yin energy, we know that is a contributing factor to a lot of the cancer, cardiovascular disease, and a lot of different. It doesn't mean excess yang does not do that, but it seems like excess yin not doesn't mean that if you eat a lot of tropical fruit you get disease. But unfortunately, we live in a society that we are exposed to so much unneeded chemicals in our life every day, exhaust fumes, radiations, that the amount of yin energy is just too much, unnecessary yin energy that usually have shown to give rise to a lot of diseases we know today. So the whole idea of that, as far as be able to be conscious of our everyday lifestyle, is to be able to say, okay, we know that these energies, whether we like it or not, they're always finding a way to find balance. If you don't consciously choose to create balance in our body, the body tries to find a balance within itself. Just like if you're trying to create global warming, the earth will start to find its own way to be able to create balance. So body find its own way to create balance. Maybe we call that balance, its way of balance, we call it cancer. Maybe we call it depression. Maybe we call it early death. Maybe we call it heart attack. None of them is really a disease, more is a body's attempt, nature's attempt to bring balance, these two forces that was created for the purpose of the creating balance in the universe. So when you look at this, for example, if you look at your food you eat every day, let's say, because in order for us to be able to understand our body physically, emotionally, mentally, we need to also realize that our body is a vehicle of consciousness. So therefore, how you treat your body, the attitude you create as a result of how you treat your body is used in your everyday life in how you treat each other. So therefore, we need to know that for us to be happy emotionally, we need to be happy physically. If you wake up in the morning and you have a very poor bowel, you have a lot of abdominal pain, and you get a headache, and maybe you have got a cramp in your back, and you have back spasming, and your partner comes in or your kids comes in and says, you want to give you a hug, and what will you say? He said, welcome them with open arms. Is that just not the state of mind you like to be able to be happy? So therefore, creating a balance in our physical body makes a big improvement, big contribution to how we're going to feel emotionally and spiritually. So when you look at our life, all you need to do is look at the balance of these energies and see whether you're using them, which one of them in your life you're focusing on the most. Are you eating all the time red meat, chickens, and cheese, and you don't have much fruit and vegetables, or you're a vegetarian, you eat a lot of the yin foods, and maybe not enough yang food to balance this energy in your system. So it's important to always to find a balance in some of these our dietary system. The purpose for today was for me just to give an introduction to this concept, and if it appeals to you, you can go and just follow it up yourself, and ask God. I mean Google. We'll tell you everything you want to know, as long as you ask properly. You just not to know what to ask. So if this appeals to you, go discover it yourself, because there's other issues that I'd like to get to for the purpose of tonight, that I just want to flow through this topic. Now, some of the yin excess that we're exposed to in everyday life is atomic bombs. We know that half-life for some of these atomic particles are thousands of years. And even though they may have been exploded only a couple of 50, 60 years ago, but the remnants and effects on the planet will continue on for another couple of thousand years. Smoke detectors, computers monitor, television sets, fluorescent lamps, widespread medical and dental use of X-rays, radioactive dyes, they're all continuously ionizing radiation that are being expanded in our air. Uranium mining, another source of low-level contamination. Fortunately, humanity has learned a lot about radioactive fallout, and safety is improving. Electromagnetic radiation, which is, we're talking about excess expressions of the feminine energy, or the yin, is like cell phone towers, laptop computers, mobile phones, plane rides, TV, microwaves. We don't realize they're all continuously contributing to building up unnecessary expressions of a yin energy in our life that somehow, somewhere, the nature has to balance. And it may balance it through other means. Maybe that in order to balance the yin excess, you need to be extremely violent, become angry, because that's a strategy, the nature you chose in your life to balance the excess yin. And maybe that's may be quite excessive use of the yang energy, but people don't realize that everything we do in our life, unconsciously at some level, we do that because originally we were created to bring balance between these two forces. And otherwise you would not find these facts in all the schools of theology, that life is but expressions of two forces, of positive and negative, feminine and masculine. So learning how to work, there must be reasons. If you do believe in the God or higher spiritual powers, there must be reasons why he created these complementary forces. He must have something in plan in his back pocket that we do not know yet, and what we might discover. So it would be nice to know how to work with it. Maybe by learning how to work with it, all of a sudden things will start happening in our life. Things will start opening up for us. The doors will open, and things that used to be shut for a long time. Relationships start to transform. Our hearts start to open up. We start to fall in love. Things will happen that we say, wow, I didn't know that. That is possible, in which all we have done is trying to bring into balance the expressions of two universal energy, which complement each other. Toxic metals and chemicals, changes in food supply. Our soil is full of heavy metals, acid rains, genetically modified foods, food refinings and preservatives. Dietary changes. Now, most people buy food from a canned food. A lot of, you go to the store, people have diet sodas, canned food, all excess yin. So diet, medical use, drug use, recreational drugs, alcohol, pollutions. It's just that because of the effect that these chemicals and these environmental factors have in our life, they resemble the same energy as yin energy. So that's why we call it yin energy. Some people are aware of acid alkaline foods, so you can compare them together. So how many of you have heard alkaline diet should be more alkaline than acid? But there's a lot of, the whole idea is most vegetables and most wholesome food are acid, but when it goes into your body, once the body metabolizes them, they produce an alkaline effect on the body. So they're yin acid forming food. They're yin foods that when they go in the body produce acid, like oils, nuts, beans, pasta, flours, that they're yin food, but they produce acid. They're yin alkaline forming foods. The whole rule of thumb is trying to create balance. And because of the exposures of a lot of these unnecessary chemicals in our diet and our lifestyle is too much, sometimes it requires more of the yang food or yang lifestyle trying to bring it into balance. What you like to have, what you need to look at is yin alkaline forming food and yang alkaline forming food should constitute about 70% to 80% of our diet. And the yin acid and the yang acid forming food should constitute about 20 to 30% of our diet. So that means if you have a plate and in your plate you would like to have a piece of steak, that steak should be probably at the size of the palm of your hand, and that should be 20% of your dietary content of the energy content of your food. So that means you need to have a lot of vegetables, but a lot of time we have a nice piece of steak, nice piece of toast with butter, we have a big potatoes, and then we have sometimes chips, where we have a whole bunch of stuff in it. Maybe we have a little bit of vegetables. It's pretty good. But what happened here is now you're creating a diet which is full of yang, is excess yang. Then the body has to trying to balance it itself, and it's very difficult. So you're putting unnecessary stress on the system. Now, what we do understand is because the nature was created first, before we as a humans came to this world, how we treat our body, how we choose the food we eat in our everyday life, how much we love ourselves internally in relationship to the biochemical process or pay attention to it, it seems to dictate how we interact with the world outside us. So therefore, that's why people get depressed. Majority of people, you go to your doctor, says, I'm depressed, they give you antidepressant. Because they believe that maybe by changing the biochemical process in our body, that you could change our behavior. If that's true, by changing certain patterns of behaviors, you could also change your biochemistry as well. So therefore, what I'd like for us to understand today is that if there is such a powerful purpose behind our creation, which one of its factor is to bring in balance these two forces, be able to work through it from our environment, our body, complement this journey a lot more. You can't just smoke a cigarette, get drunk, and go sit down and talk about spirituality. It just doesn't work that way, because that excess misuse of energy does not even allow us to activate areas of our brain which give us an experience with the divine. Fortunately, science has shown us that it is the fact. We don't need to now only talk about it. We also know that when we have a very deep spiritual experiences, there's areas of our brain that start to become active, where we have, like a cigarette, we suppress that area completely. One cigarette, for example, suppresses the right brain by 2 hours. Its creative powers. So therefore, we might think, oh, no problem, but it is actually have a profound effect. Going back to this topic again, we need to look at looking at proper program for our diet is to be able to realistically look at to see how can we support the balance of this energy is to be in moderation. Look at the foods are wholesome, organic, minimum preservatives. Foods are seasonal. For example, if you eat foods which are out of vegetables or the food which is not in the season, you're disturbing the balance of the expressions of masculine and feminine energy in our body. Now, this expression of energy throughout history has taken billions to create our culture, our planet, has been expressed in how it interact itself in a relationship as a man and a woman. So, throughout the past, the expressions of the feminine and the masculine energy, or yin and yang, has been shown to be not man and woman, is expressions of the same person. So throughout history and throughout the theology, they always refer to as for example, masculine energy referred to the sun as the right side of the person, and the feminine energy is the left side of the person, and the feminine. And we call it like a right brain that regulates the left side would be the feminine, and the left brain would be more masculine. And many times, even if you look at the pictures, some of the old picture, the third eye is an expression of feminine, and that would be the man expressions of the man. In the Buddhist, in the East, the third eye again is an expression of the feminine, and the man and the man is an expression of a masculine. So it's very important at this stage for us to realize we're not talking about the man and woman as a gender. We're talking about feminine and the masculine as an energy. Just like if you look at, for example, a fruit. A fruit is not that fruit is the fruit. It's just embodiment of the specific energy. We call it a yin energy, or it could be a yang energy. So me is not that I'm a man, so I'm a masculine. That's a mistaken identity that we've given to it in our culture, which we will discuss in a minute. Me, I'm a person that's embodiment of two opposing energy that's created me. And that energy in working together is a masculine and feminine energy. And men, as a gender, are masculine externally and feminine internally. Women are, as a gender, express feminine qualities externally and masculine internally. And that's why there is an attraction amongst the races in that genders. Now, our culture has had a long heritage of associating the feminine principle with that of it means to be a female, and the masculine principle with what it means to be male. As a result, both men and women have traditionally been locked into rigid, culturally defined gender roles that have not been helpful for anyone who wishes to live a more meaningful, creative, and soul-making life. There are today I had a patient, and he's 10 years old, and I asked the mother, how is he? Oh, he's a boy. I said, what do you mean he's a boy? He said, oh, the boy stuff, he's troublemakers, always aggressive. And I said, well, what is it, a boy? He said, well, his sister likes to do girly things. And I said, what do you mean, what is a girly thing? He said, I play with the dolls and go draws and things that girls do. And it's very interesting that you hear them all the time. When I see clients bring their children in, you always, oh, that's a boyish thing, that's a girlish thing. So our culture has created a phenomenon where we actually separate each other based on gender. Now, where did that come from? From my research, there's millions of information you can get out there, but I just summarize it a little bit here for us to understand where this gender separation came about. From a simple protoplasmic cells, the single cells that was the sign of life, within the low consciousness level, through reptilian and predatory stage, to higher developed species with complex social network reasoning on faster vibratory levels. So we evolve from a single cells and to be more of a complex organisms. And because of when you look at even the nature have a very nurturing qualities. And even how when something dies in nature, the nature, which we call Mother Earth, embraces it into its own arm, and it goes inside and buries, and it becomes one with it. So it has a nurturing quality. This maternal care for the offspring then later on becomes the plants and the animal kingdom, and then becomes humans. Is the development of the paternal care for mother and offspring in a species with a higher consciousness level then intensify this evolution to where the bond between the parents, family, extended family became main source of protection, survival, joy, and creations. In a way, as we looked at the animal kingdom, we looked at to see the qualities they have naturally in our historical prehistorical age. We looked at to see what the roles of the women were, and then we expanded on it, and where we looked at the woman, for example, as a source of the joy, happiness, nurturing quality. And the maternal love that evolved from this evolution demonstrate the importance of the role of unconditional love for our consciousness development. So in a way, the whole area of where the conditioning we had or the observation we had of the maternal love, whether it's a masculine or feminine, was based on unconditional love. So that's something that we do understand. But due to its conditional nature, maternal love is often used as an archetype for divine love. Very difficult. This is where the difference happens, which I hope that as we go through, we will have understanding that maybe that may not be the case, or could be the case. If you just look at the basic energetic aspects and take out all religious, New Age, esoteric, or other connotations, the practical representation of feminine spirit could be perceived as caring and nurturing. Is that true? The look at females, summarized, it says caring and nurturing. And the men are mostly like hunter-gatherers and protective. This is in psychology, they call it the anima and the animus. The anima to be the masculine and the animus to be the feminine. Is a personification of all the feminine psychological tendency within the man. The archetypal feminine symbolism within a man's unconscious. Animus is a personification of all the masculine symbolism within a woman. So it's more of each one of us have like as a man, as a masculine, I have a feminine within me. Each feminine has a masculine within them. So we know so each one of us has all the qualities within. But the mother, as the feminine, somehow in our history, this was separated, where feminine energy becomes as a woman, becomes gendered, and so we created the man and the woman. So the woman's energy usually is conceiving, receiving, birthing, nurturing, healing, patience, serving, compromising, allowing, flowing, softness, expansion, and oneness. You agree, all the ladies? This is not just the feminine. I could also have those qualities too, because the way we look at it spiritually, remember God created from nothing, same energy, man and woman, the whole embodiment of one energy. So we all have it. But a wrathful mother is control, fear, anger, judgmental, defensiveness, vengeance, jealousy, envy, forcefulness, competitiveness, wrathfulness, destructiveness, seductiveness, manipulation, contraction, control. When in our society we see these two expressions a lot. Are we seeing more in our society the second expression of energy or the first? Second. Why is that? Why do you think it's the case?
Imbalance.
Okay. What would have caused that imbalance?
Experiences in other social experiences.
Social experience.
Conditioning.
Our conditioning, belief system, somewhere down the line. But remember, these are just archetypes, like a symbolism. Like a masculine archetypes is a creative force that lives within all men and women. So we all have this masculine archetypes within us too. When this masculine force gets out of balance, it becomes rigid and dominating. When it is wounded, it is driven to hold on to its perception of reality. My way or highway. It happens when I'm wounded. So when I'm in control, when I want it like a lion, if I as a masculine energy express that I'm being controlling, it usually doesn't means I've got the wounded masculine energy. Just like when we see the wounded feminine energy expresses itself in that. It doesn't mean that's a negative attitude. It's just a representation of the wounded feminine energy within us. When I get angry, judgmental, or when I become very dominating. When I become very dominating, and the feminine energy, let's say in a relationship, another feminine energy becomes very suppressive, and become surrender itself, and they put up with it, and they just accept it to be subdued. It doesn't mean that's a patience. It's not that feminine lay person has a patience or endurance. It just means that action and behavior means that feminine energy within them has been violated. It's actually is hurting. It's wounded. Now, this is where tyranny usually expresses itself within us. When it is wounded, it's driven to hold on to its perception of reality and becomes an inner tyrant to our feminine, intuitive feelings and body. Like when I'm wounded and my picture of reality is now shattered, the only way that I can feel safe is to hold on to that picture. When I hold to that picture, I become resistant to learn new ideas. And I started to justify my behaviors why I am right. Everybody is wrong. When I make that decision that I am right and you're wrong, in that moment, I am wounding the feminine spirit within me. Because I no longer trust myself that there could be other possibilities. In that moment, I no longer trust my intuition. Because I'm so hurt, my masculine energy is so hurt that I take the feminine energy within me bondage. And so if I take the feminine energy within me bondage, and we know that and we always express what we feel internally projected outwardly, what will I end up to do to another woman? Take them bondage. Because it's only that's just an expression of how I feel internally. It's just natural for us to project outwardly what I'm experiencing inwardly. So when I come into situations, when I'm in this relationship, which I become very controlling, I'm actually suppressing the feminine part within me. And that feminine part of me is dying, is crying. It is just, I'm actually not doing anything to the other person. I'm just doing it to myself. The other person, in that other hand, I'm suppressing my own feminine energy, and the other person becoming put up with me started to suppress their masculine energy. And so before we know, there's a complete breakdown of change balances of these two energies within me and within the other person. So the nature universe has an option to create balance. And so it creates pain, hurtfulness, separations. Could be so many other things. This is only one way to looking at it. But the reason is because I'm mentioning it now, and the reasons why it's so profound, I consider it for us to discuss this, because we are the last part of the creations of Creator. There's no one, as far as I know, there's nobody else beside us as a human who's been created. So we know that the plant kingdom, the mineral kingdoms, the animal kingdom, they all have been created and they're serving their purpose. So we are the last stage. So understanding how the forces of creations is working within me makes a difference how the history of creation will end up. That's my opinion. So for example, when you look at the feminine and masculine, doesn't mean a woman and a man. I'm not talking about a man and a woman yet. I'm talking about one person which is composed of two complementary forces of masculine and feminine energy. So we can see that, for example, we have the feminine and masculine energy. If one puts so much attention on one area, then, for example, if I become too analytical, analytical is my masculine energy, it says be analytical, and I refuse to trust my guts, I refuse to trust my intuition, I refuse to become more receptive, more creative, maybe more flexible. What I'm doing is I'm suppressing the feminine energy within me. And if I suppress the feminine energy within me, if I see someone else who's expressing the feminine energy, I will suppress it in them too. Does that make sense? And so the other person walk away. And I say, well, why are you walking away from me? In a relationship, you say, you can't do that, but I love you. You can't go away. But I love manipulating you. How can you leave me? Stay. Let yourself become the temple of the reflections of my denial of my own feminine energy. And they look at me and say, you're crazy. I'm gone. Good luck. And so I said, I don't know what's wrong with women. It's got nothing to do with women. Or women says what's wrong with men. It's got nothing to do with that. It's understanding how we treat ourselves. In spiritual connections, the perfect relationship occurs when we marry ourselves. If the man within you can propose to the feminine within you and he says yes, and you can actually reach, he says, wow, he said yes, you know you're in the position to have a very healthy relationship externally. Because you have honored the feminine within you. As a woman, if you can honor the masculine part within you and create that balance, that means I'm ready to create that outside in another relationship. But if I'm denying it within me, I will continue denying the relationship. I can go from one relationship to the next. So it's very important for us to understand, to educate ourselves to some of the expressions of these energies, the qualities, and how when we see ourselves resisting, every time you see yourself resisting to learning, you know that you're wounding the other quality of you within you. And when that other quality is wounded, if it's a wounded feminine energy, if it's a wounded masculine energy within you, then you know that what will come later, what will come following. All the other disappointments we're talking about, anger, disappointment, tyranny, control, is the end of it, it's an outcome. So one of the things that I found that I gauge for myself is when I started to feel resistance toward anything. If somebody telling me something, all of a sudden my neck started to get hot. I know I'm killing my feminine part within me if it's related to that quality within me. If someone is telling me something that is required for me to listen, and if I'm resisting listening, I know I am taking bondage that other part of me within me. Depends on what the criteria is. If I'm expressing within my feminine, and all of a sudden I'm not being assertive, maybe I'm wounding the masculine part within me. And if I start to create imbalance between the expressions of the feminine and masculine power within me, long behold, it would manifest in my relationships with my friends, in the relationship with my wife, with my patients, in everything. And it's very interesting because I observe that with my patients. When my patient talks to me, I see whether when they're talking, I listen. I say, well, who am I talking to? Am I talking to the woman and a feminine or a masculine energy within them? And so the first thing I do is when I listen, I honor that energy within them. So once I know that, how I'm going to approach working with them. And that, as a result, people say, how come you understand us? You're such a psychic person. I say, I'm just taking a long time for me trying to observe, understand, listen, to do that. It's taken me so much pain and suffering and heartaches and depressions and anxieties for me to understand what is it I'm doing wrong in my life that has affected negatively my relationships in all aspects of my life for so many years. It wasn't true. So it wasn't just one day I woke up, I said, oh, I'd like to find out about feminine and masculine energy. I woke up one day and I says, nothing is working. Doesn't matter how much spiritual I am, it's not working. There's something wrong with me. Not something wrong with the universe, something wrong with me interpreting what the universe is trying to tell me. So I had to go back and review and look at my life, and I started to put the pieces together. And what I discovered changed my life. And every time I have a discovery, I like to share. And I hope that you can take it with you to affect your life, because I haven't even started to discuss what I wanted to discuss tonight. I'm just leading you up to it. This is the appetizer. Now, let me ask you a question. If you think at this stage, by just looking at these qualities, and by be able to identify some of these patterns of behaviors and trying to fix it within ourselves, do you think it's enough to create a world a better place? Could it be enough? I mean, we have millions of life coaches and counselors and relationship counselors, and all actively involved helping us to work with this. But the fear of World War III arising more and becomes more and more every day. There are 100 years ago, in the advent of the World War I, there were probably about 5 or 6 organizations worldwide actively working toward world peace or making the world a better place. Now, almost 100 years later, we have 1 million organizations worldwide actively involved in toward creating world peace. That's a lot. 1 million organizations worldwide actively involved in toward their mission is to contribute to the world peace. But at the same time, if that's the case, the news, everything you hear all the time is always toward it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. So do you think by just having that understanding is enough? Do you think that you could live happily ever after by just knowing that we all have these feminine forces and masculine forces within us? By just knowing how to use them, we can actually identify them, recognize the trigger within us and some of these patterns of behaviors, and then focus, change. So I'm happy. Do you think that that would be enough to make the world a better place? It could be. It may not be. I don't know. Let me ask you questions. If he's not, why do you think he's not? Okay. What is required for anything to go to the next level? Anything. Has some form of an activator. Something has to activate it. So we call leverage. So what would be the leverage for me wanting to go to the next level of really want to do work with this? What would be a leverage? The leverage usually, if this is not a longer method of theology, this is the science of moral and moral education. The leverage for any human transformation is some spiritual belief system. Something spiritual belief system has always been throughout history the motivating force behind raising one's consciousness to the next level, to a higher state of consciousness. Not making your life just better, but making a shift to a higher state of consciousness. Now, I'd like to want you to remember this, because we come back to this, but I'm just going to use some of the writings in the Baha'i faith, because the Baha'i faith has, as a world religion, within it, from my research, have had far greater information about feminine and masculine expression of energy. So I'm going to use that as an example, because some of the explanation has been very effective, interesting for me. Now, Abdul Baha, in one of the teachers in the Baha'i faith, the son of the founder, he said the world of humanity is possessed of two wings, male and the female. So long as these two wings are not equivalent in strength, the bird will not fly. Until womankind reaches the same degree as man, until she enjoys the same arena activity, extraordinary attainment for humanity will not be realized. Humanity cannot wing its way to heights of real attainment. So what is that saying? What is it that we as a human race at this stage in our evolutions are striving for? That we always talk about. World War III or world peace? We always wanted to find some form of peace. According to this statement, Baha'i theology, is that world peace will not be attainable unless man and woman reach their equality. That's a very powerful statement, isn't it? And it's not saying that, well, if everybody get together and agree on certain topics, the world peace will happen. He said the highest or extra attainment for humanity, the highest level that has been ordained for humanity, can only be achieved when a man and woman equality has been achieved. Now there's a gender difference here, man and woman. But we said earlier, men and women can only occur when we can create equality within the feminine and the masculine quality of energy within ourselves. Does that make sense? A woman does not make me perfect or does not complete me. The feminine energy within me, working in harmony by the masculine energy, will complete me. And I can practice that in another relationship to see whether I've done it right or not. I can then join the forces together. We can learn from each other. We can actually work together for greater collaborations and achievement. So that's possible only if I can marry myself. if when I propose, if I say yes. But sometimes I always tell my friends, I even tell myself, may I ask you questions? If you wanted to marry, will you marry yourself with who you are? They tell me, oh goodness, I would never marry myself, but I feel so bad for my wife, she wants to marry me. One of the fundamental teaching is on the Baha'i faith is that men and women are equal, and that the equality of sexes is a spiritual and moral standard essential for the unification of the planet and unfoldment of peace. Again, I go back to this. It's very fascinating. I've never ever read anywhere in my research in the last 35 years studying variety of theology that this statement is very powerful. It said that the unification of the planet and the world peace is impossible unless man and a woman are 100% equal. 50-50, not 50.222250001%. 50-50 in order for this to happen. As a mathematicians, even the slightest degree could change the history of a human race. If you're flying from here to Canada and you set your coordinates at, is 50.0 degrees goes to Canada. If you end up, if the coordinate gets 50.0001, you will end up maybe in Hawaii. You will not go to Canada. Maybe you prefer Hawaii. But the whole destiny and the directions of your journey will change when the coordinate changes. So according to the theology, the God has already set a coordinate for human race. He says, from the nothingness, I created a polar complementary opposite of white, black and white, or masculine and feminine. I created that, and I created a plan for his journey. For them to reach what I have planned for them, the coordinate is 50. What has been the coordinate so far for human race? 50-50? What has been the coordinates? Overall, doesn't matter what country, but overall, as an average, what do you think has been the coordinates? 70-30? 80-20? Come on, 10-90? 199? After 10,000 years of human civilizations, we're still sitting here. There is probably 20-80 or 30-70. What can we say about our race? Not much. It's very interesting. This is another quotation because this is very important because we're talking about the plan of creation. Not about me, not about you. We're talking about God had a plan that laid it up front for us. If you understand it, we support it. If you don't understand it, we resist it. Very simple. He said these two feminine and masculine forces are the same, yet they are different. And he says that these forces come out of the existence in the Tablet of Wisdom. Baha'u'llah says it comes out of this existence through what the heat generated from the interaction between active force and its recipient. So you might wonder what this means. Summarize it when most of you have studied the Bible. Take it when God says, "Let there be light," and then there was light. So, and then at the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Have you heard some of these statements? So what he's saying is that when the creation was created, was only created based on two polar complementary forces of masculine and feminine energy. One of them was its active force, one of them is recipient force. So which one do you think is an active force of creation? Masculine or feminine energy? Masculine energy. What is the recipient of the energy? So if the force of the active force of energy is there, but there is no recipient of the energy, what will happen? Creation will not happen, not the way it was supposed to. Just beware with me because this is a very fascinating journey. These two are the same, yet they're different. These two forces, which through different are the same, the supreme sign of existence of God within existence itself, and existence operated within nature as an evolution and within humankind as a perfection of nature in and as progressive revelation. In another book, Baha'u'llah says, what veils of glory more grievous than these embodiments of error? So he's saying that something went wrong. And it's a very, very grievous error. By the righteousness of God, to pierce such veil is the mightiest of all acts, and to rend them asunder the most meritorious of all deeds. What do you think he's telling us? He says, we know something very awful wrong has happened. Those who will rise to correct the error, who've done the most meritorious of all deeds. The piercing of veils, rendering them asunder, is a release of the feminine from the tyranny of the masculine, when willfully and perversely isolated from the feminine. Baha'u'llah described this release of the feminine from the tyranny of the isolated masculine as the mightiest of all acts and the most meritorious of all deeds, because the enslavement of the feminine is enslavement of the world itself by those who are the embodiments of error. This enslavement of the feminine is a rejection of the progressive revelation as the ceaseless unfolding of the world. What do you think is telling us here? What it's in within this world has such a profound effect on our individual destiny in life. What if what it's saying here is that there was supposed to be equality between these two genders, whether within us and externally, for the world of creation to manifest His plan, for the God to manifest His plan. And there is a grievous error has happened. Something happens in the history that the feminine energy became enslaved. Now I ask the question as the feminine, as you, the feminine women in this room. Do you feel that you have been enslaved throughout the history, and the power of your feminine energy have not been permitted to express itself fully because you said 2080? So if men, at the beginning of its evolutionary phase of the human race, have rejected the feminine part within themselves and have set into actions of refusing to recognize the feminine energy externally, they have done the gravest act of what God's creation is not giving the women the equal rights. And any man, any physical man in this world, in this room, rises and will willfully give back the 50% share for women, have done the most meritorious act. What I've discovered when I'm finding this is a very profound discovery. It says, wow, in a lot of the courses when we used to study the Bible, the women used to cry. They say, wow, I'm not the cause of the fall of man, because in religious studies, women are classified as they are responsible for fall of man because of Eve told Adam to eat the apple. So there's phenomena, especially in a lot of my attendees to my workshop who come from a Catholic background. They're just shattered. They're saying, that means I'm not the cause of the fall of man? I've been believe that. Somehow, somewhere, somebody manipulated the truth. In reality, based on what we understand or what I have discovered myself, is that the cause of the fall of man was the man itself. It is true. Because it takes a lot of courage to say that me, as a representative of the man, have failed women. Me, throughout the history, and the men throughout the history have kept women slaves because they have kept the feminine part of themselves enslaved. And as a result of that, they've done the gravest error. And it takes such a profound courage to rise up. And what I've discovered in my work, especially recently in the last even 12 months, that I'm getting deeper and deeper into this idea, understanding, is that all the women's wounded feminine energy that we discussed earlier, about the anger, resentment, tyranny, is because women have always fight for their rights. Is that correct? Very rarely, and they always think they have to always be given, they always have to fulfill this image of a nurturing, caring, putting up, and they're just tired of it because they're tired of fighting for their rights. Men, all the behaviors that I have observed in men, including myself, where we have enslaved the feminine within us, is because all the disappointment, depressions, anger, tyranny, anxiety, everything that you would say as a negative expressions of a feminine, suppression of feminine energy within me as a masculine, being controlling, everything I observe in men has been nothing but their refusal to give women their 50%. The resistance to give women their 50%. And I've seen even the most profound relationship, men still like to have 50.0001%. And that 50.0001%, I see that it creates such a profound effect on the relationship later on, where the relationship heading to the Toronto will end up to be in Hawaii. Is completely different. And people sit there and says, what went wrong, sweetheart? It's because fundamentally, according to the God's plan, men and women that feminine and masculine energy were created to be exactly 50-50 according to the coordinates of creation. And as a human, and it's very fascinating because one of the things that I have discovered, which is one of my interpretation, what I think I read, which in Baha'u'llah's writing, it says there are 70 different ways to interpret any of my writings. So if I think I understood one of the writings, I don't know, please forgive me if I'm misquoting here, that when he says that there is the word of God, so God said, let there be light, the act of creation is a masculine energy. So that act of energy needed to be a feminine energy, feminine energy to balance it, as a recipient. Throughout the evolution for the last 10,000 years, at least we know, the progressive revelations means that in the Bible it says every 1,000 years God sends a prophet. It wasn't meant to be every 1,000 years he sends a prophet where we can have a new world war. Is we create religions where we fight each other. The whole idea was for the plan of creation to take place, take effect. There needs to be an equal expression and maturity of the feminine and the masculine energy. And to do so, the masculine energy is set into motion because that's the quality of masculine energies. But the progressive revelation is that it will take 10,000, 20,000 years before the feminine energy can mature to the levels that it becomes expressions of the equal expression.
Why should it take that long?
It's got nothing to do with men and women. It's not gender. It's just that is because that's just what it's talking about, the energy that needs to rise. But that energy that needed to happen has been suppressed throughout the history from happening. As they call it, that is a grievous act. Even the time of Christ, Mary Magdalene, who was supposed to be the representations of the feminine energy, was completely shut off throughout history, where that equality will not be given and not allow the feminine energy to be able to reach its equality. It could have happened 2,000 years ago. It could have happened 5,000 years ago. But unfortunately, the tyranny of the masculine energy suppressing the feminine within themselves and reflecting it outward have suppressed women throughout time, preventing the unfoldment of the plan of creation. This is just what I've discovered. It's very, very profound. I mean, more and more I read at it, when I see a woman, I just turn around and go. And because I said, what have we been a part of? Not about a woman, how we have been a part of preventing of God itself to fulfill its plan. What a selfish energy we must have by preventing that happening and by just refusing to give women their 50% share. And women, I've discovered, when you give them 60% right and 50%, at the beginning they manipulate you, but the essence of the energy is after a while they give it back. God has given men their more than 50% for more than 10,000 years. They still haven't given back. But I've discovered women actually do give it back. They just need to know they could have the power. They have it, and then they give it back. They even give back more than 10%. It's very powerful. I've really observed that. Will you agree, ladies? Just knowing that you have the power, the complete equality where you are absolutely loved unconditionally as a feminine force, where you do not have to take a single step for anyone to love you for who you are. Absolutely nothing you do except being a feminine energy. That's very powerful, isn't it? It seems that from my understanding, that's what Baha'u'llah's revelation was about. To bring about the equality of the feminine expressions in this planet. Now, and this is, in my understanding, what I've discovered is the meaning of the progressive revelation is actually means finally the progressive revelation till finally the feminine energy have reached those levels where God's plan can be manifested. And it cannot be manifested unless there's a 50-50 equality. Not a 50.0001, 50-50. And the peace on earth, the prosperity of mankind will not occur. It's very simple. He said that right there. And we can see that throughout history. It makes so much sense. The progressive revelation that is the human form of evolution, a form nascent within its earlier mineral, vegetables, and animal stage as a purpose of evolution. Feminine, as a recipient of the active force, is present as the evolution of life itself. As on the biological level, that life is contained and recapitulated in the development of the embryo in the womb. The feminine is that biology understood symbolically rather than literally. In his Tablet of Wisdom and in so many other tablets, Baha'u'llah identifies the masculine with the Word of God, whose essence is forever hidden and unknown, but as God chooses to reveal it to the consciousness capable of receiving it, which is to say through the conscious feminine released by Baha'u'llah into its full consciousness, as what Baha'u'llah calls the recipient of active force. So the whole idea, for where I understand it, is God's creations of the masculine and feminine energy was to be able to be perfectly equal, to be able to manifest God's plan. But it's taken so many years for this feminine energy to be able to finally reach it. And the only reason why it's taken so long is because the masculine energy has prevented of unfoldment of the feminine energy. And is one of the stories is called the Tablet of Mariners. One of the tablets that was revealed to Baha'u'llah is talking about this archangel, the feminine energy, the maid of heaven. God says, okay, now it's time to go to the earth and to be able to bring about these message to people. So this angel comes to the earth and he gets depressed. He has a nervous breakdown. Even kill itself. He says, he goes back, he says, my God, I cannot find, there's nothing out there. They've destroyed the feminine energy. There's just nothing there. So when he goes there, and he just starts crying, and he just gives up her life. It's the first time in the history of theology you see an expressions of a feminine energy reveal itself as an angel, like most of the time the other progressive revelations, always been a male angel comes to the prophets. And this is the first time a feminine energy reveal itself. But when it wants to reveal itself, it realizes, where do I go? I have no home. So the story is a fascinating story if you actually go and read it. It's called the Tablet of the Holy Mariner. He said, the maid of heaven in Baha'u'llah's Tablet of Holy Mariner uttered within herself such a cry that the celestial concourse did shrink and tremble. Finally, in the midst of murderous contention over the successor, she fell upon the dust and gave up her spirit. Thereupon, the maids of heaven, other feminine energies, maid of heaven is a feminine expression of energy, God's court. The maids of heaven hastened forth from their chambers, upon whose countenances the eye of no dweller in the highest paradise has ever gazed. They all gathered around her, and lo, they found her body fallen upon the dust. And as they beheld her state, and comprehended the word of tale told by the youth here is talking about the Baha'u'llah, they bared their heads, rent their garments asunder, beat upon their faces, forgot their joy, shed tears, and smote with their hands upon their cheeks. And this is merely one of the mysterious, grievous afflictions. For every woman in this room who has a connections of understanding the women's suppressions of women throughout the history, could feel the pain that this maid of heaven had. Can you feel what it is felt that maid of heaven felt when he came and realized that the world has been so enslaved, the feminine energy has been so enslaved that could not find a place of expressions. He went back and he just got depressed and cried and said, that's it, I'm going to die. God, forget about your plan. The human race don't deserve it. They've messed up your plan. And there was only one, the essence that you call it, the youth, that Baha'u'llah was able to communicate. It says, carry this message for mankind, because you're the carrier of this message. And that's where the revelation of Baha'u'llah has been, is to bring about the unfoldment of the feminine energy on this planet. But it's going to rise. Who is going to rise against it? All those who have enslaved the feminine part within themselves. It goes back again to the original story. God divided the void or the oneness unto the heavens and the earth, dark and light, the land and seas, male and females. We are part of the same original essence of creations, and it is our responsibility to be able to support that expressions of energy. Ross Goodman, who has passed away, he was a Canadian scholar, professor of literature, who's done his lifetime study about the understanding of these feminine and masculine energy throughout the theologies. And he said, to isolate the masculine and feminine from each other, the active force from that which is its recipient, is to fail to recognize that, though different, they are the same, is to reject divine creation itself, with treating creation as a sense of perpetual conflict, with a masculine tyranny at one pole and a feminine anarchy at the other. The divine marriage in which the feminine soul unites with a masculine manifestation not only raises the sexes on this earthly plane to a condition of absolute equality, but also unites the planet itself into one country with all its various people, the equal citizen of it. So the way that is understood so far, according to the God's plan, if our goal is to achieve peace on this earth, it begins with women's movement. It's not about anything. It's not about economy. It's not about creating wealth. It's about focusing our attention to fulfill equality of the feminine and the masculine energy within ourselves first and outside in our relationship. Because if it, I tell you something, I had a phenomenal experience of pain and agony myself last year, that when I discovered this truth and I focused my attention, I says, okay, if this is the case, I'm going to focus my attention and focus everything about creating the masculine, the discovery and liberating the feminine force within me, not excessively, but creating a balance, and see its expressions outwardly in my life, in my relationships. Never in my life I ever saw such an effortless power that by focusing within me and balancing this energy, things around me start to change. And I says, wow, this is really makes so much sense. There was nothing I needed to do around me, because all I needed to do was balance that forces within myself, with it expresses itself outwardly. And that's really, really, and says, this is just too much for me not to share with because that's the discovery. For me, the discovery that is a possibility that the progressive revelation is actually talking about unfoldment of the feminine energy was a very profound discovery. It gave me a new hope to look at the God's plan. It gave me a new perspective, even understanding a religion, because always, like a religion, the name religion was always a taboo for me. To even understand the vehicle of the religion is nothing but a vehicle created to bring about the equality of the feminine energy, made it more very, very attractive. Because we always looked at religion as a conflict. Now I see it as a wow. And not only that, there is another end of the story. Is what can you do every day in your everyday life? What can you do in your everyday life to bring about the change? There's so much we can do, but I'm only going to talk about only a couple, so we can go away with a couple of things we could begin with, and so you can go and start to investigating. This is the time of investigation, and go and ask God, the Google, that God is in discovery. Find out and start paying attention of whether we are in support of God's plan or we are in resistance to God's plan. Now, violation of the feminine spirit has been inherited from one generation to the next for thousands of years. It is part of our learned behavior and collective programming, and therefore needs to be addressed by both men and women. Where in our life, where is it being continuously? The suppression of the feminine energy, the enslavement of the feminine energy, where do you see it the most right now? In advertisement? What is the feminine energy always is used as? Sex object. 90% of the traffic in internet is pornography. 90% of the traffic in internet is pornography. So who is resisting the shift? So a lot of times programs, movies, look at is there any movies that comes out of the Hollywood that does not involve classification of the man and woman as a gender? use them as a means of whether the man is a violent expression man or the woman is sexy and is to give out her body. So it's very, very challenging. We live in a society that has been designed to prevent the unfoldment of God's plan, which is the awakening of the feminine spirit. And because females themselves have fallen into that because of the years and years and years of thousands of years of suppression. The first step in healing the historical trauma of feminine suppression is safety. It's very important. This is the most important part of it. Both the feminine energy needs to feel safe. Both within me and you as a woman needs to feel safe. To redeem and restore our own respect and love for our own yin nature, we need safe places to explore, experiment, and regain our balance and connection to our core. So one of the things that we could do that when we feel that we just want to scream, it says, I want freedom. The feminine within me says, I want freedom. Now, how I suppress it, I go work all the time. Oh, I don't have time to give you freedom, just sit down. Somebody has to bring the butter and the bread on the table. I just don't have time until I finally have a heart attack. And the feminine energy is liberated. It says, great, now I'm liberated. So one of the ways that we could do for all of us to make the feminine energy within us, both men and women, is to take time out. Take time out for ourselves. Go for walks. Where you can just go on walkabouts. Walkabout is a feminine thing. It's very common in indigenous culture. So go walk on the nature. Connect with yourself. Because this is where you start to connect into our intuitions, to our point of creativity, our imaginations. And so important. And it doesn't. And just because you do it, don't do it. Oh my God, what I'm going to do with my kids? So if I go work, how am I going to work and pay for the bills? Those are the resistance part of you that is resisting the awakening of the feminine spirit. So it's very, very important that you make yourself feel safe. How many of you, I know for women safety is so important. It's because you're connected to your feminine spirit. How many for men safety is important? They don't know, well, they're not really as pay attention to it because that hasn't been the focus of the attention within the men, within the feminine aspect of the men. It should be. The safety means not safety financially, to connect to yourself, to go within. This creation of safety must happen within ourselves and also be supported within communities of practice. That's why it's lovely to have friendship communities that says, wow, I look after your kids, go for a walk. Tomorrow I look after your kids, you go for a walk. We support each other. Communities that can support each other is not saying, why should I look after you? Well, I'm so busy. That's not, again, anything that comes out of envy, prejudice, anger, why should I, why me, is all resistance of the expressions of the feminine energy. It is because we've been hurt. The feminine energy has been hurt for thousands of years. Places that are absolutely dedicated to this task and will create condition to exquisitely foster its unfolding. Now, second step. So you guys, from tomorrow, don't bring your kids to see. Don't babysit the kids. I will be in Gold Coast, but try to start tomorrow. Just take it out. You're already doing it. I'm sure most of you are already taking time out. But now remember, every time you do something to bring about balance between a feminine and masculine energy, you know that you are actually assisting God to create a divine civilization. It doesn't mean you have to go work so hard, suppress the feminine energy to become inspired, become spiritual, and work so hard to serve mankind where you can help God. According to what I have discovered, is learning to balance these two forces within ourselves and honoring it within each other's is very, very important. That itself is assisting God, is to establishing a divine civilization according to what has been destined for us. So the way to bring these back to balance with yang is to redirect our masculine capacity so that yang is service to yin. I want every man in this room turn around to the lady next to you and ask them, how can I be of service to you? I just wanted to say that if there's two women, the masculine part of you guys, one becomes masculine, part becomes receptive. How can I be of service to you? And just receive it. The ladies, if a man is telling you, just receive it. How can I be of service to you? How does that feel? Not unconditional. Unconditional. Just because you are. Not because you're my wife, not because you're a woman, not because anything, just because you are an embodiment of the feminine energy. And the key is how a yin, remember, the word is the active force and the feminine energy is receptive force. It is a job of the masculine energy to give of itself to the feminine energy for its expression. It is just the way that God has ordained it. We didn't make it up, it's just written. We just never read it properly or never wanted to read it deeply enough. When you look at the entire history, the expressions of a man and the feminine energy. Now, it doesn't mean a man and woman. Also, the feminine, masculine energy within the woman could do the same to the feminine energy within the man. The whole notion of masculine energy is to give of itself to the feminine energy. So we have to first do it to ourselves.
You have to surrender to it.
We got to do it to ourselves where we have absolutely no restrictions, absolutely no blockages, and no condition when we do it with outside. And that's only when we can learn to liberate the feminine energy. So this, when it comes to gender now, women need to have boundaries. If I ask you when I say that, what does that mean? What does boundaries mean?
We can say no.
Thank you. How often women are being so suppressed throughout the ages that they do not have boundaries, they put up with so much. And that is not correct. To assist God in His plan, as a woman, you need to set boundaries. Because when you set boundaries, you're not going against resisting your loved ones, you're actually going to the favor of God's plan to establish balance between the masculine and feminine energy. You answer to God, not to your husband. You answer to God, not to your boyfriend, not to anybody else. It is our duty is to be able to assist to bring about the quality of the feminine energy. And one of them is for women needs to set boundaries. Do you agree with that? It's very important. And if there is any men in this room, you need to honor that boundary. 100%. And I explain to you why that's the case. Women in particular have great difficulty conceiving a world that serves as essential natures. They're too accustomed to giving and serving what is outside of themselves at the cost of themselves. So women itself have suppressed the feminine force within themselves. Ask yourself a question. How can we possibly change the world if we cannot find time to care for and know ourselves intimately? A deep relationship with ourselves is an essential precondition for world transformation. Now, Our energy, rather than being focused on, this is how you could transform your masculine energy to be supported with the feminine energy. Masculine energy wants to be able just to immediately come up with a solution. So we don't listen. As soon as we see something, we want to solve it. Even the women have the masculine within themselves. So the key element for men who have to practice, and women who, if they find that the masculine energy is too overpowering within themselves, the power with the transformation, it comes with listening. How many women always complain that the men don't listen to them? It's because it's not the nature of masculine energy to listen. It just is not. And sometimes women do not listen if the masculine energy is over or is excess. So therefore, listening is very, very important. So the first thing you do, you take time off and you love yourself. You're trying to convince yourself to marry you. The second is you need to learn to listen in every aspect. Listening is you learn to trust your intuition. Listen to yourself, and at the same time listen to someone who is talking to us. When we get to the point that people say, wow, thank you for listening. Because when you listen, you don't need to come up with an answer. You just listen. Because all you're doing is practicing. You remember, what motivates me is every time I'm doing this, I know that I'm helping God to achieve its plan on earth. And that's very profound. Because if you understand about, in all the world of theology, they talk about world of creations. There is a plane of creation that we are created from. And it's always in all the world, all the theology studies, you say that in that levels of existence, when we were created, we didn't deserve it. We were created because God loved us, not because we deserve it. So what can we earn the deserve? What can we earn the right for being created? If we were created and we didn't even earn it, so why can we earn it now? Why can we give something back? Why can we, by knowing ourselves, by learning to balance the masculine and feminine forces within ourselves and honor it in others, we can start to assist the divine creator of establishing oneness of mankind. And that itself is a very good, honorable task for me. Would it be that for you? Only if there is a belief within the higher power. So listening kindly, patiently, with understanding that the yin feminine world is full of treasure and lay under obscuring veil. I went through an experience with my relationship that I could not get through. You could see that the wounded feminine spirit in my relationship there. And I did not give up. I gave 1,000% of servicing the feminine energy, and I knew that when it finally heals, there's something beautiful that would come out of it. I did it completely unconditionally. And I could, because there got to be a complete willingness within us who wanted to do it. Not saying, well, I've done so much effort, how come you haven't changed? It's not that. It's saying, I will do anything I can to bring about the birth of the feminine spirit within that person. Regardless of whether they punch me every day, because I'm only dealing with a wounded feminine soul. And am I willing to stay there long enough to see the birth of the feminine spirit? And it's so beautiful to watch that, actually. Very beautiful. So, feminine energy's gift will be yielded to those who have an attitude of respect and devotion, to those who trust and have faith that there is something of value to be discovered, even though it is not immediately obvious or useful. For masculine energy or yang, the lovers of feminine must know this. The feminine demands to be loved for its own sake. So it means if as a male gentleman, you need to love yourself unconditionally. And you got to really dig in to find out what the feminine part of you is, the feminine energy. I experimented with a lot of my male friends. I said, how is your feminine energy? So, what do you think I'm gay? I said, what do you mean you're It's very interesting how when I bring these notions of the feminine energy with males, I really get they step back from them. But I keep insisting. And it's interesting that so much they have this really resistance with even the notions. And I know those people who have resistance to the word feminine within themselves are the ones who in their world are the ones who are suppressing the women at some level. Whether it's in the work environment, whether it's their sister, whether it's their mother, whatever it is, because they have to. That's just the way these two energy express itself. To listen in this way is an art. So it's going to take a long time. And it takes time and space. Yin requires nurture, which means if the desire is to cultivate our feminine beings, we must have sacred circle within which we ourselves are sovereign. So you need to have boundaries. You need to love yourself, and you really need to focus on nurturing it. It all begins with the yang qualities of focus, listening. So you really need to learn to focus, listen to yourself, trust yourself. So if you can really discover yourself, then when I meet someone else, I can focus and listen to them. Because through that process, I learn to discover them. And everything will unfold from there. What on human plane constitute the masculine as a symbol of transcendent and eternal Godhead is this degree of detachment from all earthly things, including our knowledge of all earthly things. So this is the more advanced levels of surrendering and your masculine energy. You need to completely detach. So it doesn't matter whether I'm a man or a woman, the masculine energy needs to be detached from everything. So don't try to, if you do something, you're doing it because you want to achieve a goal, you have a secondary motive, you are actually, your masculine energy are becoming overstimulated. You can excess masculine energy. So you need to do it just because you want to do it. You do it for just the sake of creation, sake of loving it. If you want to give something, do it because you want to give. And if you want to work, maybe that at a certain levels, beyond that, you need to learn to be detached from the money. Being detached from attachment. You could have a lot of the money, but you could be detached from it. So it's that could take years to practice. But according to the writings I've discovered, that's a fundamental equation for learning how to work with the masculine energy. For within us, is to be detach ourselves from any outcome and be able to just doing it unconditionally. Now, as a feminine energy, these are just a couple of little things. As I discovered that, so I put it here for you. As a feminine energy, and if you mix it with your masculine energy, as a balance of the feminine and masculine energy, this would be at the end. So this would apply for both of us, but this would apply mostly to women more than apply to men. Because this is women using the masculine energy within, coming up with a certain strategy of behaviors that will resemble balanced actions of both forces in work, which is, as a conception, to conceive, being able to set healthy boundaries. Being appreciative of all experiences, having direction, being able to receive, being self-forgiving, being honoring, being self-loving, being attentive, being strong, being driven, being humble, being protective, being fearless. Those are the qualities that resembles balance of feminine and masculine energy, most in women mostly than men actually. But we all have those qualities. Practice it. Men's duty to woman. This is gender duty, guys. This is very, very important. This is the punchline for the whole night. This is where the line is drawn and the destiny of men have been established in this statement here. The world in the past has been ruled by force, and man has dominated over the women by reason of his more forceful and aggressive qualities, both of body and mind. But the balance is already shifting. Force is losing its dominance, and mental alertness, intuition, and the spiritual qualities of love and service, in which women are strong, are gaining ascendancy. Here, hence, the new age will be an age less masculine and more permeated with the feminine ideals. An age in which the masculine and feminine elements of civilizations will be more evenly balanced. Men have an inescapable duty to promote the equality of women. The presumption of the superiority by men thwart the ambition of women and inhibits the creation of an environment which equality may reign. The destructive effect of inequality prevents men from maturing and developing the qualities necessary to meet the challenges of a new millennium. As long as women are prevented from attaining the highest possibilities, Abdul Baha says, so long will men be unable to achieve the greatest which might be theirs. So basically, it is essential that men engage in a careful, deliberate examinations of attitude, feeling, and behavior deeply rooted in cultural habit that blocks the equal participation of women and stifled the growth of men. The willingness of men to take responsibility for equality will create an optimum environment for progress. When men own the equality of women, there will be no need for them to struggle for their rights. This is so important because what it's saying is that the future of the growth of the race of men depends on their ability to give up their rights, the 50% share, and give it to women. Men will not grow if they refuse to give their rights to the women. This is a very profound spiritual statement. Men will never have an opportunity to grow spiritually if they do not actively give women their rights. When I read that, I said, my goodness, I give my own rights back even to women. I don't want to stop my learning. It was so powerful because ever since I've been working with this topic, I've seen my mind expanding so fast. And I never really understood it. That by resisting to liberate the feminine energy, how I have even prevented myself of growing spiritually. So this is very, very powerful. This is something that is shown that women should start to teach their sons at the early age. That the only way they would ever in life would be spiritually satisfied if all their deeds and action is toward giving women their equal rights. I just thought it would be interesting. Hillary Clinton wrote to NASA as a child inquiring how to become an astronaut. NASA replied, girls could not be an astronaut. She became Secretary of State. If you want to save the world, invest in women. That Desmond Tutu. Thank you. Please find it take this information with any grain of salt. Go and do with it whatever you like. But it's such a great discovery that I think every man should really, really start paying attention to. Men are the ones who are going to change the future of this planet. not the women. Women have been trying to, but they've been hitting with resistance with men. So unless they are willing to give up, it will happen. According to Baha'u'llah's revelations, that God's plan for mankind has been set. Feminine energy will rise, but who will suffer in here is the men, because they will prevent their own spiritual development by refusing to liberate the feminine energy. So thank you very much, and maybe we will explore this further in the future topics. So thank you for coming. Have a great night. Enjoy yourself. There's a copy of this talk again if you want to communicate with Q-Mers to give you a copy of that.